Welcome back to another one. This one is the Black Boule, the Black Gatekeepers of the Illuminati, of the elite, of the cabal, of the deep state, whatever you want to call it. And when we think about the Black Boule, the talented 10, the divine 9, the Greek organizations of the sororities and fraternities. And I'm just going to give a little history lesson on that. Um, and we're going to get into it. And back in the 90s, I never joined. My grandmother was a golden sword, AKA. I was the first AKA team, and I have other family members who are AKAs. And when my grandmother passed, they did a ceremony, Ivy Behind the Veil. It was beautiful. However, I met a man named Steve Coakley, and he was coming to Detroit back in the early 90s, late 80s. And I saw him every time he was coming to Operation Get Down. I never missed it when he came. And when he started breaking that down at the end, I'm going to play a video of him, but this is my short version of the Black Boule. Mm. And then we're going to get into what he was saying. Okay. And it's going to be about a half an hour, but he really break down the history. And his name is Steve Coakley, and they did unalive him. He was bad for real. I loved him. He was. All right, let's get into it. All righty then, y'all. To bring a clear understanding of who the Black Boule are, let's let me give you an example. Who's the gatekeeper? Oprah Winfrey, D.L. Hughley, Roly Poly Martin, P. Diddy, Jay Z, Benjamin Crump, um, Kamala Harris, Black Boule. Um, who else are the gatekeepers? Oh wow. Oh, Nelson Mandela. There's a video out here where he was sworn in to the Scottish Rite Freemasonry, and he had on that apron. I was blown away. Went through the ceremony. Yes, he was. He sold out too. Seeing to me, everybody got a price to sell they soul, but your Diddy's, your Jay Z's, um, mm, who else? Steve Harvey. These are your famous Black Boule. You get the picture. But these are the gatekeepers that sway that, but now they're losing their power because whatever they say is not working anymore because the masses of the people have woken up, as in Joel 2. Evil God is outpouring his spirit and waking the people up. And that's just what it is. And so they don't have the influence that they used to. Oh, Martin Luther King, Black Boule. Hmm. Yeah, Morehouse graduate, absolutely. Your past is Jamal Bryant, T.D. Jakes, Tyler Perry, Black Boule. Let me see, and I'm just naming these people off the top of my head, but there's many, many more. So let's get into it. To bring a clear understanding of who the Black Boule are, you first have to understand the terms Field Negro, House Negro, and Uncle Tom. You know what that means? You know what? We're going to play Malcolm X. Yes, we are. Let him break down the Field Negro. Hold on. I wasn't even going to do this, but it just came to my mind. We just gonna play an excerpt.
There was two kinds of slaves. There was the house Negro and the field Negro. The house Negro, they lived in the house with master. They dressed pretty good. They ate good because they ate his food when he left. They lived in the attic or the basement, but still they lived near their master. And they loved their master more than the master loved himself. They would give their life to save their master's house quicker than the master would. The house Negro, if the master said, we got a good house here, the house Negro said, yeah, we got a good house here. Whenever the master said we, he said we. That's how you can tell a house Negro. If the master's house caught on fire, the house Negro would fight harder to put the blaze out than the master would. If the master got sick, the house Negro would say, what's the matter, boss? We sick. We sick. He identified himself with his master more than his master identified with himself. And if you came to the house Negro and said, let's run away, let's escape, let's separate, that house Negro would look at you and say, man, you crazy. What you mean separate? Where is there a better house than this? Where can I wear better clothes than this? Where can I eat better food than this? That was that house Negro. In those days, he was called a house nigger. And that's what we call him today, because we still got some house niggers running around here. This modern house Negro loves his master. He wants to live near him. He'll pay 3 times as much as the house is worth just to live near his master. And then brag about, I'm the only Negro out here.
Facts.
I'm the only one on my job. I'm the only one in this school. You nothing but a house Negro. And if someone come to you right now and say, let's separate, you say the same thing that the house Negro said on the plantation. What you mean separate? From America? This good white man? How you gonna get a better job than you get here? I mean, this is what you say. I ain't left nothing in Africa. That's what you say. While you left your mind in Africa. On that same plantation, there was the field Negro. The field Negro, those were the masses. There was always more Negroes in the field than there was Negroes in the house. The Negro in the field caught hell. He ate leftovers. In the house, they ate high up on the hog. The Negro in the field didn't get nothing but what was left of the insides of the hog. They call them chitlins nowadays. In those days, they call them what they were, guts. That's what you were, a gut eater. And some of you all still gut eaters. The field Negro was beaten from morning till night. He lived in a shack, in a hut. He wore cast-off clothes. And he hated his master. I say he hated his master. He was intelligent. That house Negro loved his master. But that field Negro, remember, they were in the majority. And they hated the master. When the house caught on fire, he didn't try and put it out. That field Negro prayed for a wind.
Right. Right. Facts.
When the master got sick, the field Negro prayed that he died.
Facts.
If someone come to the field Negro and said, let's separate, let's run, he didn't say, where are we going? He said, any place is better than here. field Negroes in America today. I'm a field Negro. The masses are the field Negroes. When they see this man's house on fire, you don't hear these little Negroes talking about our government is in trouble.
Sure don't.
The government is in trouble.
Facts. Facts.
Imagine a Negro, our government. I even heard one say our astronauts. They won't even let him near the plant. And our astronauts, our Navy. That's a Negro that's out of his mind. That's a Negro that's out of his mind.
Well, you can't get no better analogy than what Malcolm X broke down the house Negro and the field Negro. I'm glad I thought about that. Hold on, I'll be right back. Move, Max, because I forgot to do something. All righty. Let's get back into it. All right, move. Okay. The first two terms were coined because although both were slaves to the white man during slavery times, one held himself above the other. And remember back then when like my grandmother became an AKA in 1945, you could only be light skinned. They did not let darker skinned blacks into the AKAs. No, they did not. That's why they formed the Deltas. Deltas was formed for the our darker sisters hue, But anyway, the house Negroes still had deplorable living conditions and treatment, however, since they were typically half white or even the offspring of the plantation owner, they had better living conditions and food than the darker skinned slaves. Facts. House Negroes spent their days and nights kissing up to the plantation owner's feet. Now, now all house Negroes had superiority complex over field Negroes, but most did. It was the plan from the beginning to pit black slaves against black slaves to maintain white supremacy. That is a fact and it's still going on to this day. Willie Lynch letter. Facts. Mm, mm, mm. Where there is bickering, there is no unity. Where there is bickering, there is no unity in the workplace. We bicker and complain about everything. That's why we can't unify. When they are class lovers, when they are class lovers, there can be no unity. Facts. Facts. The white man knew this and controlled us with it. Is this the beginning to look or sound familiar? If you have time, check out the Willie Lynch letter, like I just said. Okay? This will give you more insight on the psychological warfare waged against blacks since the beginning of slavery. In 1904, the first African American Greek secret society was formed in Philadelphia by Dr. Henry Milton and five of his colleagues, the Boule, an acronym for Sigma Pi Phi, and pronounced Boule, Boolay, was formed to bring together a select group of educated black men and women. Fashions after Yale Skull and Bones. Who is in Skull and Bones, which we'll talk later as Secret Society? Both Bushes. John Kerry. That's why when they had that race, remember not remember John Kerry, Democrat, ran against George W. Bush. They were both brothers. And their allegiance is to Skull and Bones and they master. I couldn't believe it. I said, you can't make this up. and you thought they was in disagreement and this they were disagreed and had different ideas and thought values. No, they don't. Mm-mm. Same as it is today. Anyway, fashion after Yale's Skull and Bones, the Boule historically takes pride in having provided leadership and service to Black Americans during the Great Depression, World Wars One and Two, and the Civil Rights Movement. Who could the Boule offer? What could the Boule offer America? Blacks in the early 20th century joined the exclusive secret society, offered advancement and perks to select blacks in return for loyalty to its objectives. The upper tenth or the talented tenth started to live the good life as Boule members, while the majority of ordinary blacks were disenfranchised. But what were the Boule's objectives? Hmm. The Boule recruits top blacks in America's society into its ranks. Today, 5,000 archons, Archona, male Boule members, and their wives, archonanese, with 112 chapters, make up the wealthiest group of black men and women on the planet. Archon means demon. It does. It does. The kind that like to keep hidden. But to who does the Boule really serve? The satanic, mostly Caucasian global elite. Facts. As long as the black member conforms to the rules, the riches will be in abundance. If not, down comes the hatchet. Blackmail is part of the deal. The Masonic Secret Society has a pyramid style like all the rest. The lower ranks are kept from knowing what the upper ranks are doing. The early 20th century was the period of Reconstruction. Marcus Garvey Garvey represented genuine black leadership. W.E. Du Bois, I say Du Bois, but it's Du Bois, whatever. Found it, and I used to love him. I got every book by him. But when I found out who he truly was, no. But at the end, he apologized about when he found out the truth, but about Marcus Garvey, but he was long gone then. But anyway, Garvey represented genuine black leadership. W.E.B. Du Bois, founding member of the New York City chapter of the Boule, said the Boule was created to keep the black professional away from Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was a warrior. He was proud go back to Africa movement. That's what it was, and they got rid of him. The remaking of the House Negro was necessary to institute a group of blacks who had vested interest in protecting the elite white system. It was about selling out brothers and sisters for power and money. Just like you can't make it into the Quincy Jones, Black Boule. Look, you can't flourish Will Smith. You cannot flourish in the Hollywood or in the music industry because you got to go through the gatekeeper. It's three doors. Noriega told you the homosexual door or the sacrifice door. Or you got a door that you can go straight. And Noriega chose the door to go straight. And he said, well, good luck to you, young man. Let's see how you do. And he never had another hit after that. But other than that, Will Smith had to go through Quincy Jones. Tupac, Quincy Jones, he dated one was it Rashida Jones or the other one? But anyway, LL Cool J had to go through Quincy Jones. Now, then you have another group that had to go through P. Diddy. Then you had another that had to go through Jay-Z. These are your gatekeepers to do the bidding of their master. It was about selling out brothers and sisters for power and money. Rick Ross. He almost cried in that video when he signed Meek Mills. And who did Meek Mill had to go through? Diddy. Y'all saw the picture of Rick Ross and Diddy kissing. Okay. Anyway, the majority of black lawyers, doctors, engineers, and accountants were members of this secret club. The Boule is another arm of the nefarious secret societies that recruit, indoctrinate, and call for the dark forces. Therein are perks galore, power and notoriety all lying in wait for the easily compromised soul. In the Greek system, the Boule was the lower house of parliament, charged with organizing the affairs of the city for the king. Let that sink in. I'm going to read that again. In the Greek system, the Boule was the lower house of parliament, charged with organizing the affairs of the king. This is an ancient story. The New World Order is the old world order. The elite blacks of the Boule are culling and controlling their own for a slice of the elite white Caucasian man's pie. That's a fact. And if you look up here, you see we have Henry Milton who started it and his friends. I can't really read that, but that's the when you see that ring, that's the 33 degree Mason. But you see the skull here. And I met two men with that ring on, but they were Caucasian. And I tried to, some things I knew they weren't going to tell me, but I still asked, questions. Okay. Members of Sigma Pi Psi include co-founder of NAACP W.E.B. Du Bois, civil rights leader Reverend Martin Luther King, former NAACP president Kwasi Mumfu, former United Nations Ambassador Ralph Bunche, Black Boule, former Atlantic Mayor Maynard Jackson, all Black Boule, former Virginia Governor L. Douglas Waller, Black Boule, American Express President Kenneth Chenault, Black Boule, Bobby Scott, C.O. Simpson Sr., Ken Blackwell, United States Attorney General Eric Holder, all Black Boule. Barack Obama, Black Boule. Ron Brown, who they got rid of, Clinton did that. He was going to tell the truth. And what? He had a plane crash. And when they did the autopsy, he had a bullet hole in his head. Yeah, that's how they do you. Vernon Jordan, Arthur Ashe, Millward, and John Baxter Taylor Jr. All Black Boule. The first African American to win an Olympic gold medal. Numerous other American leaders are among the men who have adopted the fraternity's purpose of creating a forum wherein they could pursue social and intellectual activities in the company of peers. Sigma Pi Phi is also open to the members of all races, as can be demonstrated by its well known Jewish member, Jack Greenberg, mm, who succeeded Thurgood Marshall, Black Boule, as general counsel of the NAACP. Lawrence Otis Graham talks about the organization and his membership in his book, Our Kind of People Inside America's Black Upper Class, written in 1999. Now, let me break down the history of the NAACP. Hold on. That's what we got to do. I got that in another one of my lectures. I don't know why I didn't put that in because maybe I had talked about it. No, that ain't the true history. Oh, shoot.
Election season is here. Remember,
Okay. So, anyway, okay, this is kind of, so I'm just going to go verbatim. Now, the NAAC was started and funded by the Rothschilds, and its only black member during this was W.E.B. Du Bois. Everybody else was Caucasian or of Anunnaki Zionists. Zionists. So, and it was started because of the riot in 1908 that happened in Springfield, Illinois, where Sonia Massey was just unalived. Springfield, Illinois has had a history of racial problems for, let me see, this race thing was in 1908, almost 200 years. I don't know why black folks ain't left Springfield. But this is why the NAACP, with the backing of Rothschild's money, two black men being held in Springfield jail for alleged crimes against white people were transferred to a jail in another city, spurring a white mob to burn down 40 homes in Springfield, Illinois. Black residential district, ransacked local businesses, and murdered two blacks. The NAAC was established in February 1909 in New York City by an interracial group of activists in response to the 1908 Springfield race riot in Springfield, Illinois in 1908, started 1909. The founding members included white progressive Mary White Overton, Henry Moscovich, William English Walling, and Oswald Garrison Villard, along with such African Americans W.E.B. Du Bois. Then later on, Ida B. Wells, Archibald Grimmick, and Mary Church Terrell came on. I have never supported the NAACP. I would not give them a dime. Some early members of the organization were included suffragists, social workers, journalists, labor reformers, intellectuals, and others have been involved in the Niagara movement, a civil rights group started in 1905, led by Du Bois, a socialist and a writer. A white lawyer, Moorfield Story became the NAACP's first president. Du Bois, the only black person on the initial leadership team, served as director of publications and research. In 1910, Du Bois started The Crisis, which became a leading publication for black writers. It remains in publication today. And there you have it. Like J. Edgar Hoover said after Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, that any black leader will be created. Bam. And there you have it. Groomed. Barack Obama, groomed by Henry Kissinger, Beninsky, and George Soros. Communism. Now we got Kamala Harris, groomed communism. Wow, you can't make this stuff up. But anyway, now I'm about to let me play Steve Coakley. This is the man of the hour, and they did do what they did to him, but he is awesome. Oh, here we go.
Off of these Negro Klan members and explain to us what the Boule is all about. So what we'd like you to do is tell us the history of the Boule, who the Boule are, their origins, and the relationship to the ruling class.
Thank you, brother. I would thank you for hosting me and my friends here, and appreciate you and all your company. Everybody's excessively intense, and that is the demand of the day. This secret society, this particular black secret society that we'll talk about today, is the first of the black Greek societies, started in 1904. And that word that you said, Boule, is actually an acronym. It's a Sigma Pi Phi. Sigma Pi Phi, 1904 in Philadelphia. And for most of our people, we are not prepped to the responsibility of secret society in the American society. Mm-hmm. And this founding constitution, this illegal criminal enterprise, was a Masonic affair. And a Masonry is a form of secret society. There are other well-known secret societies like Skull and Bones at Yale, of which this corrupt president and his father were members of. And it is that society that the Black Society modeled itself after. So when they wrote their first history book, The History of Sigma Pi Phi, by a very noted Black author, University president Charles Wesley, who wrote the history book for the Elks, the Prince Hall Masons, National Council of Negro Women, Alpha Phi Alpha, and Sigma Pi Phi. And as a result, in there, in page 28 of its first history book, it noted that it wanted to be like Skull and Bones at Yale. It was right here in Los Angeles at the Good Life on a Friday night. If you remember this time, the NAACP had a convention here, and LeGrand Klieg and Marla Gibbs were accused of making inflammatory statements.
Working with Dr. Graham's book, The Mannequin Line Motif.
Yes, that weekend, the Boule was meeting here, July of 1990. They were having their twice every other year convention, biannual. And it was a front page article in the LA Times by Karen Grigsby Gates, who denoted that these elite Black men were meeting in Los Angeles at this time. That was the first. I remember sending someone to the car to bring it in, and we read it from the stage of the Boule on July 18th, the day the story appeared, front page LA Times. And I thought it was unusual that the LA Times knew of this society, and I didn't know of them. Now, for our audience to understand, I'm starting off trying to explain to Black people the impact of international policy groups like the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, when the bankers began to take over the American cities in the 70s, New York 75, Cleveland 77, Chicago 79, and here in California, they used Proposition 13 to suck up the surplus out the budget, and bankers began to take over from municipalities the governing of the cities. And as I was scratching, I could not figure out how was there such Black complicity in this centralization of worldwide power, the New World Order. It's on the dollar bill, pyramid by white men who never built one, never saw one, but they emulated this symbol. And now comes a series of societies, and now comes forth this Black one in 1904. As we began to read deeper, it had another analogy in the story to Skull and Bones. It wasn't until we got the history book that the analogy that looked happenstantial in the story in the LA Times was actually deeper in the actual history book where they drew attention to Skull and Bones, it denoted that W.E.B. Du Bois was a member, and it began to describe people, influential people in the present day society and historically. Our university, historically black college presidents are primarily coming out of this advisors to the king. And that word, that Boule word, can be looked up in a encyclopedia. Well, now people don't use them, they use internet. And that's a dangerous thing, a dangerous dependency. But Boule, B-O-U-L-E, the Greek version. There's a French version that's a coming together, a conclave, the AKA called their convention, the Boule.
Yeah.
But the Greek word is what we're looking for, the advisors to the king. The lower house of the Greek parliament is called Boule. And if you know the American congressional system, Senate, 6 years, more power, authority, only 100. 2 per state. Congress, 435, have to run every 2 years. Your lower house has less power and authority. So it appears as if in finding the Boule that within it was a subordination to something else. And in its history book, it drew attention. Here's a logo. And this is their logo is a Grecian sphinx. It's an animal. And this Grecian sphinx is similar to a griffin or a gargoyle. Kind of ironically, the Boule had their convention in Los Angeles in 1941. And where else? Griffin Park. And this logo, this symbol, is a guardian animal. This would be similar to a Rottweiler or a dog or a German Shepherd. They tend to protect something higher than itself.
Facts.
Let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. I went to Howard University, for instance, and a number of African so-called Greek societies, fraternities, as well as in our community, there's a number of secret, semi-secret organizations. How is the Boule different than the numerous fraternities and groups in our community? What is the relationship to the ruling class?
Father, son. The nine make up the axis of the Black Greek dynasty. There are 4 male societies, 4 female societies, and the Boule make the 9th one. They're the first, 1904 series, the Alphas. I'm not versed in the exact order, but I have all of their history books. And each of them draw attention to things where they got their ritual from. The Deltas draw attention to Freemasonry. Said our ritual came from Mary Church Terrell, whose husband, Robert Terrell, was head of the Masonic Lodge in Washington, D.C. Mary Church Terrell, Mary Church, is the daughter of the first black millionaire in America, Robert Church of Memphis, Tennessee. Huge mausoleum to him there. Those societies, those 4 male, those 4 female, and the Boule tend to make up a aristocracy. We talked in the park about the 10%, not in the sense of us in exclusivity, but them in the terms of deputizing 10% of the population to assure that the 90% never catch on.
Facts.
And it's very important to know.
Facts.
If you look to Alpha Phi Alpha website, there's alphas, kappas, Qs, and Phi Beta Sigma. There's Zeta Phi Beta, Delta Sigma Theta, AKA, and Delta, I'm missing somebody, Sigma Gamma Rho. If you look to, say, the Alpha website, they brag about being 95% of all black lawyers. Now,
oh my God.
95% of the black lawyers. What does that leave? The kappas, the Qs. Okay, now we're in the 90s. They claim to be 65% of the black accountants, the lawyers, the doctors, dominating. And it may be that our professions are dominated by people in the Greek societies. At Howard, there was a student that I tried to help get a...
Hold on. You can't make this up. You cannot make this up. I'm in the midst of a... Hush! He going in. This is who I used to go see. Man, when I tell you he was awesome, and this is why I never joined.
Doctorate in engineering. Very exclusive about giving them out. If you get one, you're set for life. Morgan State, Howard are very exclusive. Took big money from governments to make engineers, but the brothers weren't coming out. And when we got deeply involved, we found how close-knit, how selective the professional process is. So he ended up at the patent office. He was a Kappa. He said, we have 15 blacks, 1 female, 14 brothers, and all 14 of us are Kappas. Only Kappas gonna get in here. And there are jobs all over where we think we're applying for something fair and open. But I would suggest that the ruling class recognized this was a very significant period, Didon, when they decided that they would give a college degree to a person of African ancestry in America who after Reconstruction should have been pretty pissed off. And so they were very weak about to Africans in America. Only 2,000. So there was this thing they went through, a born man versus the made man. The born man, the king and the queens of Europe, had to deputize people to colonize the lands, the Columbuses, and the, Cecil Rhodeses who went to Africa. They weren't the aristocracy, but they fought to be gladiators and colonists and explorers. The Lewis and Clark, who were Masons. These men used the societies to advance the wishes of the ruling class, and they set up a system, a circle within a circle, within another circle. Each circle protected the circle within it. So when you look to that Boule logo, you see there's an urn. There's an animal with the wing of the bird, the tail of a lion, and it's got an urn, and it's got its paw over the urn, and it says in the history book number 2 by Hobart Jarrett that in the urn are the names of the people who are chosen to lead the state, which suggests that part of the society function is not to make known who the people of power and authority are. And one of their most serious indictments to this society is what they were used to do against Marcus Garvey.
Yep.
Could you explain that, please? Marcus Garvey, who began to surge for Africa, the Negro was breaking free, doesn't have a good reason to get with the white American establishment.
You're right.
They don't have a good reason.
Not getting paid.
They just built the country, got set free, didn't get the 40 acres and the mule.
Sure
got
didn't.
reconstructed when they began to move into the southern houses and the Senate. They got reconstructed and knocked back. So there's disarray in our community. And this is before the industrial cities of Chicago and others began to have steel and what do you call it? The stock markets. These are cattle, not bonds, where people began to work in the South. Fled to the north to work in those factories. And Robert Abbott, who was a Boule man from Chicago defender, who was a period when all the black editors were brought into Washington and told that they would have cracked down on Marcus Garvey, and their newspapers were not to be used. The Pittsburgh Courier, Chicago Defender, the Afro-American in Baltimore and Washington. All of these are Boule families, the advisors to the king, this group. So when Marcus Garvey came, whites began to think that maybe assimilation is better. Maybe we can escalate. Let's not let these go. Maybe they don't seem too pissed off about all of this. Maybe they'll forgive these things we did to their ancestors, and maybe we can trick them, have a little, want some more. So as Garvey began to move, they began to see that a Harlem Renaissance could have been necessary, that they could then attract Africans in America into literature and science and the arts and poetry. And when he said back to Africa, he's trying to get to Liberia. So R.R. Moulton, who was a big Boule man from Tuskegee University, who replaced Booker T. Washington. R.R. Moulton became a spy for the U.S. government to coordinate the program against Marcus Garvey in America. We have classified documents that came out in 1993. The Memphis Commercial Appeal did the story about Martin King, Kwame Ture. A lot of things came out about spying. Well, in that, which did not make the public press, when we actually filed for the documents, there was R.R. Moulton telling Von Demon at Military Intelligence, don't tell anyone what I'm going to tell you about what Marcus Garvey said last night in Harlem. And the letters marked confidential. And of course, eventually, R.R. Moulton, who went to Liberia, was given $5 million to form a committee to keep Marcus Garvey out of Liberia. He never made it. He wanted to get there bad. They put $5 million in 1919, man. This is 50 million, 100 million today. Inconceivable. And they rewarded R.R. Moulton for trying to undermine Marcus Garvey. He got the first, this is deep, he got the first black veterans hospital in the United States.
Wow.
And then what did they give him for reward? Syphilis. You see the reward? Yeah, see, he got something.
No back.
But what they got was bad, what they gave him,
So let me ask you, so in essence, what you're saying is that the Boule represents the buffer class, the petit bourgeois, the comprador buffer class that manages Africa's workers, peasants, students, and middle class in many ways, and are paid well for that. And they receive their direct orders from the European capitalist class.
Yes, if you would look to today, where Boule members like Vernon Jordan, who is managing director of Goldman Sachs, he took Bill Clinton to his first Bilderberger meeting in 1971. The black man took the white man from Arkansas to the big international.
Wow.
Jordan, former head of the Urban League, who groomed Ron Brown, who then went on to become Secretary of Commerce, killed in a plane crash, murdered, because Boule are considered domestic. Martin King was Boule. Look at the relationship between Martin and Kwame over going against the war. You don't hear anybody in the African-centered community primarily against the war. They're basically accepting it or looking for what they try to get when whites are passing out things like, a grant here, this or that. They don't appear to be focused on that money that's being wasted, those billions of dollars.
You say the Afro-centered community support the war?
They are not, no, I'm just saying they are not pushing against the war. Yeah. Same way Martin King, when April 4th of 67,
you're right.
1 year before he was killed to the day, when he came out of Riverside Church with Kwame in a shirt and tie in the front row, waiting to hear, because he called and said, you got to hear this. He comes out against the war. Boule men are told to be domestic, not international. Mickey Leland was Sigma Pi Phi. He tried to stop a starvation going on in Ethiopia, Somalia. His plane crashes into the mountain. Congressman from Texas, he dies. Ron Brown, Martin King. Yeah, no question. Martin King became international, and that became his biggest sin. He was financed by some of the greatest foundations America ever had to offer. But if they get beyond the defined limit, then there's trouble.
Facts.
In terms of young people today who are on college campuses who want to join fraternities and sororities, what is your advice?
It's interesting. The movie Stomp the Yard. I thought that was an interesting attempt to try to reconstruct the options, because they are catching hell in the streets. There is a rise of Kemetic-centered, African-centered societies that are repudiations of Greeks. And this is on the rise on many of the campuses around the country. And many of those fraternities and sororities, like the American military, were finding reduced numbers, questions of hazing and brutality. And see, that's an important thing about a secret society, is the initiation or the ritual, which is an act of submission. I would never want anyone to underestimate when someone goes on that line and they beat them, or they make them do things or unusual things or ridicule them, that act is an act of submission, and that's very essential to keeping a secret society in order. How do you command that subordination? And so for today, when they're on the campuses, they see the Boule. If you look to the Boule Journal, you can look up SigmaPi5.net. You can hit up my website, stevecopley.com, and then you can link into their website. You look at their Boule Journal, you see what they play up. They're the head of everything. They're announcing every key position they have. They're the advisor. They're every person, every corporation. They're the black head of American Express. We can just walk on down the line of those that roles were theirs and only theirs. No one got past. I noticed that Harold Washington, our black mayors were uniquely Boule. Andy Young, when he was Atlanta, when he was New York. Bradley, when he was Los Angeles. But none of those men were able to groom their man. So Bradley was mayor 20 years, but didn't have Bradley too. Jenkins couldn't turn it over to anybody. Them white folk walked and beat on his door to run him out. Different cities. Detroit, Coleman Young was not a Boule member. Harold Washington was not a Boule member.
Now, did y'all hear that? Coleman Young was not a Boule member, nor Harold Washington was not a Boule member.
And the relationship between the white financial firms and Harold Washington was uniquely different than it was with men who were more trusted.
Brother Steve.
Yeah, it just made me think about something we had talked about. As a young brother in Chicago, really wanting to get involved in the movement. When I came back from college, there were various options. Was in Chicago, and the black politics at 75 was still dominated by Mayor Daley. Ralph Metcalf, who was the first person to break away, who's assistant was Harold Washington, who eventually became the mayor. That first congressional district, which Bobby Rush, former Black Panther, is the congressman in now. That district, we had Hakeem Mahabuti there. Bobby Wright was on the west side. The NAACP, the Urban League.
Elijah Muhammad.
I was going to say, Minister actually came to Chicago just a couple of years later when Elijah Muhammad died, and he was brought in from New York and then stripped by Wallace D. And he stayed in Chicago. With that period of coming back, there was not a lot of things to get involved in. As I'm scratching, I found a book, None Dare Call It Conspiracy. It's a white, right-wing kind of guide book. And it says sometimes some things about us.
That's the name of my channel. That book was written in the 1800s. Come on now, because don't nobody know my channel is named after the book. Because you couldn't even say the word Illuminati back then. You would be unalive if you said the word.
Communist or something. But I looked through that and I saw relationships with General Electric and Exxon Mobil. And I looked at all, and these relationships I started to research. It wasn't until I found them in Chicago that Chicago accepted what I was trying to say. We used to have one radio show came on WJPC, Johnson Publishing, who is Boule, Ebony Jet, etc. And Vernon Jarrett was the host of the show, who I didn't know was head of the Boule at that time, Chicago Tribune columnist, started AXO for the NAACP. And one day I called in and I was trying to explain some of this stuff, and he cut me off. He said, we're not going to have any of that. I didn't know he was Boule. When I ended up becoming special assistant to the mayor, the other special assistant was Erwin France, who was head of Model Cities under Mayor Daley. He was an alpha like the mayor, they buddies, all of this and that. But I was a threat to him, but I didn't know at that time he was head of the Boule. It wasn't until later. And then that's when I went to my friends, my African-centered friends in Chicago, and say, hey, man, I'm researching these white folks, and I think I found the black folks connected to the white folks. And then I started finding black folks' names, African-centered black folks' names. Jay Carruthers, and Jay Carruthers is my hero in Chicago. He's in a group with Bobby and Conrad and Bob Stars, a lot of people, Anderson Thompson, people I love. He said, man, we got to talk. Let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. And I started looking up other names. I saw Asa Hilliard's name. And so I felt that as I began to get deeper into this relationship, I began to notice that my African-centered friends were less happy about me getting to the bottom of this. And they wanted to focus me on, I remember them taking me in a room, to work for Bobby Wright. I remember them taking me in the research room. They had put this map of the United States. They had all these little pin boards on Montana, Utah, Wyoming. Said, now we want you to focus on these guys. I said, well, what bank do they run? And I was trying to say that the First National Bank of Chicago was Chase Manhattan. Because the guy left Chase, came to Chicago, took it over. Well, time came. First National Bank of Chicago merged with Bank One of Ohio. They merged with the National Bank of Detroit. That's the region. They all merged with Chase, who had just merged with J.P. Morgan. Mm-hmm. And now Rockefeller got the banks from New York all the way to Chicago, nonstop.
Illuminati. Chase, Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan, all got started with Rothschild money. Break it down. See, we got a few more minutes.
Every one of them locked down. But the Chicago was resistant to accepting this focus. See, why aren't our people focused on ExxonMobil? Why no protests against high-ass oil prices, I make my children know who's on the boards of all these corporations, the private equity firms that own all of the stock, Vanguard, Wellington, Global, Barclay Global. These companies are obscure to our community. Mm-hmm. We're not knowing. We're not focusing on the white supremacy that's coming at us. The Klan is not a threat to our African community. They're not coming in the neighborhood, but Chase and Goldman Sachs and Lazard Perez and Standard & Poor's and Moody's, obscure bond rating companies that can control cities that our people don't mess with. Mm-hmm. I showed in Chicago and Cincinnati, which had one of the best boycotts of any city. Right. It is. I mean, it was, and it still went on. Just last weekend, they tried to come back with a big festival. Mary J. Blige pulled out. Some more people pulled out. Kind of made it lose money. Mm-hmm. And but there in Cincinnati, we targeted 3 people: the Taft family, which runs the state, Skull and Bones. Mm-hmm. Taft family still today. The governor was just left as governor. We targeted Procter and Gamble, and we targeted Carl Linder, who owned Chiquita Bananas. Mm-hmm. And when we got through harassing Chiquita Bananas, some of our friends at the radio station there had stock. $119 a share. When we finished with him, it went to $5.40 a share, and he sold Chiquita. Now, what I'm trying to say is there's a vulnerability in America that has not been exercised by our community because our secret societies have been pledged never to tell us those vulnerabilities. They work for them. They patch them. They protect them. They act like they don't exist, but they serve them. Mm-hmm. And they never utter against them, even never whisper to us. Mm-hmm. If you saw on that Boule tape when we were there messing at the convention, mm-hmm. I told my buddies, we're not here to recruit them. We don't want them to be better brothers. We want to warn them that if they're the guard dog on white supremacy, when we jump the fence, what you going to do? You're going to bite, you're going to fight, or you're going to run out and let us get to who we after. Ooh. But how do we get to who we after when we got all this wing and wang out here, all this distraction, all this misfocusing, and then is there complicity in our community? When some people killed Martin King, when some people killed Malcolm X, did that neutralize our present leadership?
Facts.
Who are byproducts of assassination? Mm-hmm. Did this put us in a bind? Do we have a lot of old paper out there that white folks work when they want to keep us in a bind and we don't seem to talk back? Mm-hmm. How can they make $10 billion in 90 days in an oil company that was broken up when a white woman attacked them in 1911? Tarbell, they broke them companies up, them Standard Oils. And then they brought them all back together. Exxon got with Mobil, Chevron got back with Texaco, and all the things Rockefeller broke up got put back together.
Let me ask you a question. So would you say, because it seems to be the common denominator of all the corporations in the system you're talking about is capitalism/imperialism. So that in fact, organizations that are anti-capitalist as a theoretical formulation and specifically target these multinational corporations, oligarchies, that is the path of liberation for African people and destruction of this economic and political system. And maybe that's why also in this historical period we exist today, you find that very few so-called African nationalist or progressive organizations are anti-capitalist. In fact, what they're saying is we want to be part of the system as opposed to attack capitalism, but we want black capitalists instead of European capitalists.
And you know, it's the one thing we have to be careful for as time has progressed. If you were to go to Toy Bean Hall in London when they created social work, mm-hmm. when the rich felt it was necessary to infiltrate the poor so that they aspired through the tentacles of the rich that had been spread out amongst them, that if you fought capitalism all day and you ended up not fighting the social service network, you would find there's another aspect that might not even pledge to be capitalist at all, might pledge to be helping the people.
But most of the social service networks are either financed by nonprofits, churches, foundations, the state, cultural affairs departments of different colleges, different cities, some we go down a whole list of funding sources. Right. So in the final analysis, if we go after the capitalist system as a theoretical formulation, but pinpoint, as you say, with laser here, focus the specific corporations as a category to be assessed, especially in terms of the impact upon African people, like you say, the poor, the standard, and these multiple bond association that finance or definance infrastructure in our communities, and as capitalists now going to Iraq and Afghanistan to build their economic and social structure at the expense of ours.
There is a web. There is a web. There's sports. They're the media. Mm-hmm. They're education. Mm-hmm. They're social service. Mm-hmm. They're astronauts. They're the church. Right. They are all of that. Right. They are the secret societies too.
Facts.
And they all work in a loose-knit fashion, and they keep disagreements within a manageable limit.
Facts.
Let me just say a couple things real quick.
We've got about 60 seconds. And I want you
this
to
Saturday, this Saturday at the FIBA Center.
Okay, briefly, let me go to Judge Joe Brown. I'm getting sleepy. I was gonna do more than one video. Oh shoot, that's the wrong one. I can't. I'm tired.
Then again, when I look at that, I look at all of this peripherally. But the war was between W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. There is a lot of recent propaganda making Booker T. Washington a hero, but essentially he was not talking about black folks developing vocational skills. It's just be satisfied wherever you are. And if you're good, your children are good, grandchildren are good, then your great-grandchildren may benefit from some grateful white folk and they may get benefits. That's the way it was taken. My grandfather hated Booker T. Washington's guts with an intense passion. Both of them did. And they were, to an extent, contemporaries. They were in their 50s when Booker T was in his prime. So there is that family history I disclosed. But W.E.B. Du Bois was the person that was saying we need to essentially lead a revolution and use force even if necessary to get what we want. Booker T was saying, be satisfied with what you have, be nice. That's been modified, and each generation it flips back and forth to an extent. Now, Marcus Garvey was sponsored by Booker T. Washington, so that made him an enemy of W.E.B. Du Bois. And what's going on is there's a lot of animosity that developed because at the time all of this was going on, 1914, there were some people like me who had been born in the 5th decade of the preceding century who were in their late 60s, early 70s, and they were either in the Caribbean or in the United States. And what happened is in the 1840s, the Maroons in Jamaica, and prior to that, within their father's lifetime or slightly before, Toussaint Louverture had gotten Haiti free from the French. Mm-hmm. So those people looked down as just embarrassments upon American, mainland American black folk is less than less for having to be freed by Massa Lincoln and the Civil War rather than getting themselves free. So people who were alive 20-some years old when this happened were my age when this is going on, and there was this animosity between Du Bois, who was saying it's embarrassing that we needed the Civil War for black folk to be free. They should have gotten themselves free like the Maroons, etc., and the Haitians, etc., and the others that took Booker T's position. Now, you have Philip Randolph, and through him, you get into this thing with the black Pullman car porters. They were unionized.
Randolph was a boule.
Yeah. Now, that was, okay, well, Pullman car porters, but you have to understand that at the time, outside of doctors, a few black doctors, very few black lawyers, and some others like that, the creme de la creme in the black community, Pullman car porters, chauffeurs, and butlers. So this Black Boule is very much opposed to somebody who is very dark-skinned, heavy set, speaks with patois because he comes from Jamaica Mountain, and he's Caribbean, and he sweats a lot, and he dresses up in these posturing uniforms, and they accused him of what essentially would be today a Ponzi scheme. Right. I don't know whether it's true or not. It wasn't of that great a concern to me because Garvey was a footnote who basically confined himself to economics rather than to political consequence.
Facts.
W.E.B. Du Bois made a lot of changes in life. He was a co-founder, one of the three. One was a Jewish guy, one was a Jewish woman, and then there was W.E.B. Du Bois.
The false organization.
That led to the NAACP, of which he was one of the three founders.
But he also funded eugenics.
I know, but I'm just saying, aside from that, Du Bois' transition, he denounced the NAACP. He wound up renouncing his citizenship and left the country because he didn't want to be bothered with it. About this time, he's starting, just like Malcolm did, but he didn't die or get killed like Malcolm did. He started saying, yes, what Garvey was talking about, an international economic base is very important. So I revised my position on Marcus Garvey. Meanwhile, the Boule hated Marcus Garvey with a passion.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I watched.
That's like the Boule hates my guts, or
Right.
The Boule then would be just like the bunch that was supporting what's her name in Georgia for senator
Abrams.
Tracy Abrams for governor. Yeah, that would be a direct parallel against.
Right. So last night I watched, because remember me and you was on the phone talking about something totally different. We ain't gonna talk about it now. And I was like, I gotta go. I gotta do some notes because I was watching Dr. Henry Clark, a video. It was a YouTube video. It was this YouTuber.
Man, I love Dr. Henry Clark. Oh, I wonder what he say about the Boule. Oh, let me see what they say. They talking about.
Watch it. Watching that video, everything that man said, it made me think of you. Because a lot of things he said, you've mentioned. Because he went into and remember I was fighting you on.
I love Dr. Henry Clark. Oh yeah, we're gonna have to get into Dr. Henry Clark. We're gonna have to get into it. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, share this video, send this out. People need to know what they dealing with when it comes to the Black Boule. This is true. This is fact and not fiction. All right. And there we have it. Oh, you know what? I can't do it like that because I'm tired. All right, y'all. Good night. I gotta get up in the morning.